Welcome to our Sound for Video session, Soundies. Thanks for joining us today. We've got what I hope is going to be a great show for you lined up here, and we're going to do a few different things. So let me go ahead and queue up the agenda here. Let's take a look through this and show you what we've got. So first of all, I wanted to take a look at Dialogue Isolate, which is a module in Izotope RX, and it allows you to do some pretty incredible things when it comes to mixing video and film. And I've got an example from a group that I worked with this last week with some audio samples. What we're going to really kind of highlight is the fact that, or how I would go about mixing a track when it was recorded in kind of a cinema style. So they recorded one camera angle on one day and a different camera angle on a different day. And in addition to there being a day in between the shooting, there was also a substantial difference in the noise floor and the room tone between the two. And so Dialogue Isolate becomes a really super valuable tool for helping to mix those two together. So that'll be the first thing we look at. Then we have some questions that were submitted ahead of time. We'll also go to the chat here if there are any questions there. And then we're going to come back at the end and we have a giveaway of a couple of different things. I guess let's go ahead and show those now just so everyone is aware of what's coming up. So first of all, it's going to be a Deity VMic D4 Duo, little camera top microphone, and it has the mics on both sides. So if you're into interviewing on the go without having to mic anybody up, pretty useful little tool there. The other one's not exactly sound related, but it is video related. We have a Hollyland Mars 300 kit, so wireless HDMI transmitter. And so you can transmit from your camera to a monitor or a separate recorder. Those could come in handy as well. So those need a new home where they'll get some use. And so we'll come back to that at the end. All right, I'm going to go ahead and let's head on over to the Mac here and let's show you what we have here. All right, so we're going to do this in DaVinci Resolve, but Izotope is going to be where we're going to do most of the processing. But let me just play through what we have so far, just to give you some background. So these are training videos. They like to put a little bit of, shall we call it panache into them. They kind of do some verbal sparring with each other, kind of in a fun, in a fun way. So let me just play through what we are starting with. If you can, try to use some good headphones because there's some subtleties here that we're going to be trying to address. So let me go ahead and play through it and let's talk through.
Here's a button. It's blue and it links to google.com. I know, you're so original, Grimmer.
Grimmer, who said that?
I did, just now, Sarah.
You, sir? You are ridiculous.
Yes. And I also have the ability to turn anything into jello.
Okay, so that's where we're starting. And what I want to kind of highlight here, you can even see it visually, but if you look, so here's Grimmer's track up here. We have Sara down here. You can even see in her track right here that there's something going on here to definitely, and if you listen carefully, let me just play this part again. After Grimmer talks, listen to Sara's track or her clips when they come in. I think you're going to notice there's sort of a very different room tone.
I know, you're so original, Grimmer.
Grimmer, who said that?
I did, just now, Sarah.
You, sir? You are ridiculous.
Yes. And I also...
So you can definitely hear that there's, hopefully you can hear, but if you, if you're working on really good headphones, you could definitely hear that there's a difference there on Sara's mic. Part of it has to do with how the mic is aimed. Part of it has to do with the tone of the room over in the corner where she's where she's situated and all framed up is different. I think there was also a light, like a hair light on her that had a fan in it. So there's more going on there. And so what I would probably do is, obviously one thing you need to do when you start here is you definitely need to do your crossfades. So always critical to do your crossfades. And you can see here in Resolve, they make it actually quite easy for you. I like to put this a little bit of a curve in there. It has a better sound to it from my point of view. Whoops, just accidentally moved that clip. Go ahead and do that. Now that's not going to totally solve the problem on our own. It will help a bit, but there are some things that we still need to take care of. And you can see, yes, this is tedious work. I also want to kind of highlight while I'm doing this, we're kind of doing two different jobs here. So it would be the dialogue editor if you were talking about a film with a budget, It would generally be the dialogue editor that would do the parts that we're doing right now. They would be responsible for taking out any mouth clicks or pops or any of that business. But generally, it's the mixer, and the dialogue editor should be putting the fades in as well. But typically, the mixers or the re-recording mixers are the one. They don't want the dialogue editors to go in and denoise it or anything like that in most circumstances. Now, if there's something that's a faster turnaround and the re-recording mixer knows the dialogue editors and trusts them to do it, maybe they would allow them to do it. But generally, most re-recording mixers are like, no, don't touch it. That's my job. Let me take care of that. Because again, they have a different perspective because they're working with the dialogue, plus they're working with any score that there might be, and they're also working with any sound effects. So they do have a different perspective. Let's just see what happens now that we've put in those fades and see if you can hear a difference now.
Here's a button. It's blue and it links to google.com. I know, you're so original, Grimmer.
Grimmer, who said that?
I did, just now, Sarah.
You, sir? You are ridiculous.
Yes. And I also have the ability to turn...
Okay. That helps somewhat, but you can definitely, as soon as Sada starts talking, you can definitely hear that room tone difference behind her. And so there's definitely still some more going on there. So what I would do... there are a few things that you can do here, and let's just do it on a clip basis here today. So I'm going to just right click here, and we're going to go ahead and take this into RX8 here. It's going to bounce that out, bring it over into RX. All right, now we have a closer thing. Incidentally, you'll notice here, this is the part here in the middle that actually played, that we're listening to. All this other part has actually been cut off. We're not using that in this particular take, or in this particular cut. So... just so that you're aware that that is around there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and highlight a portion of things here just so that we can loop through it and you can hear the effect that it is having. So let's go ahead and play through it once here. Oh, stand by. Again.
Who said that? Grimmer, who said that? Grimmer, who said that?
Okay. A couple things I've noticed right away. So obviously there is a ton of room tone there. I don't know if you guys are picking up on that. You should be at this point. But there's also a mouth click here. Now, there are a couple of different tools here in Izotope RX that you can use. There's this mouth D-click and there's the D-click. So there are two different ones. What I have often noticed is that mouth D-click, I think, works pretty well if you have an entire clip or a bigger clip that you're working on, maybe in your final mix, and you just want to run it over the entire, 10 minutes or whatever. That one I generally find works pretty well there, but it isn't always so good at taking out these little things here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use D-click here, just with the default settings, hit it. You'll notice that disappeared. Let's go ahead and play it again.
Grimmer, who said that?
Completely gone. Good. So there's one example of something I might do. Now let's go ahead and pull out the Dialogue Isolate, and let me kind of talk you through this here a little bit. So the really cool thing about Dialogue Isolate is that you have a separate control. Well, let me take a step back. This processor essentially goes into the audio and is able to figure out, okay, of this signal, which of this is dialogue and which is everything else, noise. And it's able to separate those. And you can use that, you can kind of tweak how sensitive it is to that detection by using the dialogue separation sensitivity settings. So you can go all the way from 0 up to 10. And you kind of have to kind of play through that on preview and kind of find the spot where it seems to be doing the best job. So the idea is you don't want it to affect the dialogue, but you do want it to capture the noise at the same time. And that's usually a trade-off. Now, what's cool, after that's done, you can come back up here and say, okay, I want to decrease the noise, the part that has been identified as noise, by this much, by this many decibels. And typically, my strategy is it's better to do multiple passes and do kind of milder noise gain reductions than it is to go kind of all crazy and just say, squash the noise at minus 47 dB. And the reason for that is it just generally doesn't sound quite as natural, and it can kind of do some funny things. So I generally try to take a milder approach at it. You can also boost the dialogue if you wanted to do that. Typically, I'll use this as kind of I'll leave this as it is at 0 and use the noise gain reduction. Now, what's interesting too is you also have this ambiance preservation. Here's the reality, and I think a lot of us fall kind of into this trap, is that a lot of times you have to put your mind in the mindset of narrative film for just a moment. A lot of times we try to make something that sounds like it was recorded in the perfect anechoic chamber studio kind of setting where we want 0 noise, nothing whatsoever. The problem is that doesn't sound very natural. So from my point of view, it is important to leave some ambiance when you're doing something that's a little bit more like a narrative. Now this, this is a training video, so we could probably go either way. But to me, it starts to sound a little otherworldly if you do completely and utterly obliterate the noise. I think it's okay to have a little bit. It's okay to embrace having a little bit. Obviously, it's best to have it so that it's not distracting. And I feel like at this point, this recording, it is kind of distracting, to be honest. So, but in any case, you don't have to completely and utterly destroy the ambiance as well. You can also dial in how much of that you want to keep. And usually I'm going to keep some of it. Let's go ahead and start it at 50 and see where we get. So I'm going to go ahead and preview it. It's going to go through several times. One other thing to know about the way Izotope works is it's actually going to start playing back here, unprocessed, and then as soon as it hits this line, it's going to kick in the processing so you can hear the difference. Okay? And the same thing on the other end, just so you're aware of what's happening. So here we go. Let's go ahead and check this out.
Who said that? Grimmer, 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 who said that?
Okay, I went ahead and applied a little bit. So I dropped the preservation down to 20%. We did 6 dB of noise attenuation, and that's where we got. Now, I felt like it was actually doing a good job of separating the dialogue from the noise itself, so we didn't even need to adjust this. But actually, let's go back and just kind of move that around a little bit so you can see what happens when we do that.
Who said that? Grimmer, 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 who said that?
Incidentally, in this case, I'm not hearing a huge difference on that. It's actually, I think this might be a little bit of a softball, if you will, or a soft pitch. It's pretty easy for this algorithm to be able to identify the distinction between this right here, the room tone, and the dialogue. So that's not going to make a huge difference for us in this case. Let me just go ahead and do it again where I'd pull this way down so you can hear what that sounds like.
Who said that? Grimmer, 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 who said that?
You can see we can essentially totally and utterly remove the room tone. I'm probably going to go with something a little bit milder, and I'll probably do 2 passes, but let's start with 6 and see where that gets us.
Who said that? Grimmer, who said that? Grimmer, who said that? Grimmer, who said that?
Okay, let's go ahead and try that. Let's take that back into the overall mix and see where we're ending up here. Went ahead and save that. We'll switch back over. You can see it looking different. I may have to cut some of that off because we didn't process all that part, so that's okay. You can see it also removed our fades. What's it doing here? Okay, let's go ahead and play that.
Here's a button. It's blue and it links to google.com. I know, you're so original, Grimmer.
Grimmer, who said that?
I did, just now, Sarah.
You, sir? You are ridiculous.
Yes. And I also have the ability to turn anything into jello.
Okay, so that's an example of how you can do that. That makes it a little easier to cut these in, and it feels like it's not so jarring when we cut to Sara. There are lots of other things that we can do here as well. And in fact, probably I would do some EQ. I'm still hearing some reverberation in that space. I wouldn't want to totally eliminate it. I'm hearing it actually on both of their tracks. The room sound, I'm hearing a little bit of room, and I think that's okay. The question is you just have to decide how much of that you want to kind of try and pull out. But overall, I'd probably try to match those up as well. I think they're not too far from each other as far as reverberation is concerned, although Sada's tracks has a little bit more than I think Greamer's does. Or Greamer's, the reverberation's a little bit different. So that's kind of how I would start to approach this. You'll notice, of course, also that we railroaded this. So we're cutting out the parts where Greamer's not talking, and we're cutting out the parts where Sada's not talking, just so we don't have that kind of buildup of tone while they're both running. So there's some kind of just general principles and things that I would take a look at if I were approaching this, and how Dialogue Isolate can be a super, super valuable tool. It's just so amazing to me what you can do with that tool. I mean, if you do want that studio sound, as if you recorded in an anechoic chamber, you can get that if you want it. But you can also use it in a more subtle fashion. And in fact, if we were doing a shoot, working on maybe a sequence or a scene that was shot outdoors, where there was more natural ambiance that you did want to keep, that ambience preservation, that is super helpful. Like you get to dial in exactly how much of the traffic or the other, nature sounds or whatever it is you want to retain, while still making the dialogue very, very present and understandable for the audience. So some pretty cool things there. So I just wanted to demonstrate that, give us some little bit of a look at that. So go ahead and put any questions if you have them in the chat, and we'll take a look at those here. Can you discuss when in your workflow you go to RX? Yes, it depends on what we're doing, Rob. So I would, if I'm doing something, a lot of my corporate video, for example, is just going to be talking head or interview. And a lot of that, we basically just have one big take. And in a lot of cases, I can actually just take that into RX right up front. Even before we do the video edit, I can do that because I'm doing everything. I'm doing the edit, I'm doing the mix. I can just do that right up front. Otherwise, if I'm doing something that's more narrative oriented and there are lots of different takes and I'm not sure which one we're going to use until we get the edit done, I'll do the edit first and then I'll come in here. I generally will do it. Again, my mixes for the corporate work are pretty straightforward. Usually it's just dialogue with some music bumpers on the intro and outro. Sometimes we have a music bed through the whole piece. That's a little less common, especially for the longer form video. But so for me, it's really focus is really around dialogue editing, and I'll hop in there as I'm working through the cut. So I'll probably railroad things first, like we had it when we started here. Then I'll come back, I'll put in all the fades, or actually sometimes I'll do the fades as I'm railroading, cutting things up so that we're not getting the extras left there. And then I will come in and do any sort of cleanup that I need with RX is typically how I'll approach it. Now, RX is also what I typically use because it can do the offline processing for loudness. I will typically do that as the last step. So once I have the whole mix sounding like I want it to, it's all cleaned up, I'll bounce the mix, and then I'll take that into RX to do the final loudness work. But I understand that in version 17 of Resolve, which was incidentally just released last week, they've upped some of the loudness tools. So it could be that it's possible to do it. It's always been possible since Fairlight's been introduced to do it in Fairlight, but they may have some offline things now is my understanding. So that'll be pretty cool to start working with those and see how that goes. All right. Nice, but what's the cheapest version of Izotope you need to make this? I don't know. Let's go look. Let's go to izotope.com. Let's look at RX. Come on, RX, there you are. I'm going to open that. Let's pull it in and do a dialogue. Isolate. Dialogue Isolate is only in the advanced version. Yep, so it's only in the advanced version. So you need the advanced version to use that. Now, keep in mind, there is still the dialogue denoise and the denoising, the general denoising. So those are available in the other 2 versions as well, and could probably, in this particular case, could probably do a similar type job. The power of the Dialogue Isolate is that ambiance preservation. So if you're getting up into cases where you're working on them, where there is a budget, that's where a tool like this becomes super useful. And so yeah, it's not available in the lower versions. All right, Greg, in Dialogue Isolate, have you had any problems with the separation algorithm setting of joint or advanced joint? I get artifacts using the joint or advanced joint on any poly wave files. Not that I've noticed yet, and typically I've already kind of separated things out, and so I'm not working on poly wave files when I take it in, so it's something for me to look into still, Greg. Good to know that you're having, good that there are some potential issues if you're going to in the joint or advanced joint settings there. So down at the bottom, you'll see the separation algorithm, and there's a couple of different settings there for joint channel, let's take a look and see what those are again. Over here, there's joint channel, channel independent, and advanced joint channel. So something that I haven't really played with yet. I've just been doing it in this kind of context that I showed you here so far. And I'll take a look at that when I get an opportunity. Thanks for that, Greg. Do you use RX plugins directly in Final Cut Pro 10, or do you work directly in RX and then go back to Final Cut? Depends on the situation. I will, for example, if I find a mouth click in Final Cut after I've done a lot of my other there are a whole bunch of workflow considerations. Sometimes I will use some of the plugins in Final Cut, yes. So for example, a mouth click, if I find one, I'll just take care of it there so I don't have to do it later. So what I'll do is actually cut the track. You use the blade tool and make a little cut of the area where it has the mouth click and drop on a declick plugin. Usually the default settings will take care of it and I move on. So that's an example of where I generally will stay in Final Cut, but once I get to this stage here, I will generally take it out to another app. So, and usually lately when I've been doing mixes, it's mostly been in DaVinci Resolve in Fairlight. So that's the latest on it. Okay, Kevin. Kevin, the Basic Filmmaker rebooted. Congratulations on the new channel, Kevin. And thanks for coming here. Kevin is using Premiere Pro. I round trip to Audition easy. Is RX really a good idea for simple videos? In this case, I'm thinking not. And for more sophisticated audio work, is that correct? Yeah, I mean, it's obviously if you're going to do something that's much more refined, if you will, something where you have the budget and the time to go in and do something that's a little bit more important, or you feel like it needs to be cleaner. Yeah, so I mean, it's really entirely up to you to make that decision about what's a worthwhile investment and what's a worthwhile investment both in terms of time and in terms of money. If you're making YouTube videos for your family and friends, probably not worth the investment. If you are, if you're getting paid to produce something in a corporate video capacity and they are giving you the budget to do this, then yeah, you should do it. Or if you have written this into the contract, then yeah, you should definitely do it. So yeah, it really depends. As anything, that goes for gear, that goes for post. All of that is really budget dependent and what is appropriate for the particular situation you're working on. So good point, Kevin. Thanks for that. John says, if after using Dialogue Isolate, the voice still doesn't match well, would you put room tone back in under both sets of dialogue? That is one thing you can do, yeah, and especially at the transitions. But yes, yeah, you could definitely do that. And if you do add room tone to both sets, could you use a generic room tone if the sound recordist didn't get any? That's a little trickier. Yeah, I mean, do what sounds right. That sounds right for the space. I typically wouldn't do that. I usually wouldn't synthesize it. I usually try to get the two of them to match. It has to be way off to really do, to really have to kind of synthesize something like that, like essentially creating an aural experience of a room. But in this case here, I think we'd probably be okay for the budget that we're working with here and the time constraints that we're working with here. I think just doing what we did here would probably be appropriate and probably all that we would do. I would actually go back in, though. I would probably try to treat the reverberation a little bit, and no EQ has been done to these voices yet, so I would probably go in and smooth them out a little bit as well. They're sounding, once we push the loudness a little bit on them, they're kind of sounding kind of in your face and a little bit harsh. So I would come in and do some work on that as well. So thanks for that, John. When you say you bounce a mix to loudness correct in RX, do you mean you bounce out the main bus at the end? That's correct, Thomas, yes. So I bounce the whole mix, and that creates a new stereo mix track. I take that into Izotope RX, and then I do the loudness work there, just because it's faster that way. What's the difference, for example, between voice denoise and spectral denoise? When do you know when you need spectral denoise? Spectral denoise, I think, has more to do with, and I don't use that one a whole ton, but there's spectral denoise, there's spectral recovery, and there's spectral repair. And I haven't been into those in a lot of detail, but generally the idea there is that if you can isolate, if the sound is a very specific set of frequencies, I think that's where those are more appropriate. If you have a broadband noise, for example, that's where you're probably going to want to use dialogue denoise. Is that what it's called? It's called voice denoise. That's where you'd probably want to use voice denoise as opposed to using one of the spectral recoveries. So usually spectral means it's confined to a set of frequencies as opposed to broadband noise. And that's typically where I would turn to one of those. So that's a good question. Boulder Surfer, do you know if Izotope is working on making Dialogue Match available outside of Pro Tools? I don't know. I do have the Pro Tools version. I haven't had a chance to move in or to work with it a whole lot, but that one's pretty incredible. So that does a bunch of different things. It takes care of pretty much everything we described here, plus matching the reverberation of the space, plus EQ matching different microphones, all of that kind of in one plugin. It's really, really cool. Very powerful. Right now, it only works in Pro Tools. I think they were trying to hit a specific market there. I mean, it's an expensive piece of software. And that one, I think, is really aimed at, post mixers, people that are doing stuff and getting paid more money for it than most of us are. Probably not for corporate video so much, and not for YouTube videos so much, but for kind of higher end productions. So I don't know if they're working on it. It'd be cool if they were. I'd love to see it available on other digital audio workstations. I have a kind of an interesting perspective, I think, on Pro Tools. And I think a lot of people do. Even when we talked with Andrew Masters last week, he was basically saying, yes, I still use Pro Tools, kind of in a resigned fashion, almost like, it's such a pain, but it does so many wonderful things. And there's some other DAWs that don't do what Pro Tools can do in certain domains. And so I feel like he's kind of resigned, like many people in the music world are kind of resigned to still using it. That's, yeah. So right now, only in Pro Tools as far as I'm aware. Okay, is it time to move on? Okay, cool. Let's move on. So let's come on over to our questions for this week. All right, first up from Hansang. I learned quite a bit about Audition and Fairlight through your courses. I was wondering if you're planning on having a similar tutorial course for using RX8 standard. Now that I purchased RX8, I find that Audition is redundant in my workflow and also canceled my subscription, but I would like to learn the tips and tricks from a seasoned professional. Well, first of all, I'm not sure I'm a seasoned professional in RX. I have used RX pretty extensively in certain domains, but not across the board. But yes, last week I was working with an organization, a company out in California, and that's where these audio clips came from. And so one of the things that I found, it was kind of just more general purpose audio consulting for their production unit. And what we kind of landed on is the two areas where they needed the most help were, number one, how to operate their production mixer, which in this case happened to be an 833, Sound Devices 833. And so I put together a whole series of kind of instructional videos on that. So that will probably turn into a course at some point for the 8 series for Sound Devices, recorders, mixers. And then the second one that they really wanted was they wanted to dig into more detail in Izotope and post-processing and understanding a lot of the things that they can do there. So it will probably turn into an Izotope course at some point, yes. So good question on that one, Hansung. So yeah, definitely, I don't have a timeline on that yet. Again, I've still got my day job I'm working on, so, but we're definitely looking into that at some point here. Next up from Art, I own a Rode Wireless Go. I always wondered why they didn't have an option of a second transmitter for interviews. That is one transmitter for an interviewer and another for an interviewee. Now they have introduced a Rode Wireless Go 2 with 2 transmitters and much, much more, including onboard recording. What are your thoughts? Are you planning on a review? And just to follow that up, Philip also asks, can I correctly assume you're working on a review of the Rode Wireless Go 2? I've got my mind almost made up on purchasing a set, But before doing so, I'd still be very interested to know how they hold up when being put through the Curtis in-depth evaluation process. Yes. In fact, Rode contacted me before the release of the Wireless Go 2, so they contacted me probably 5 or 6 days before the release. They had me sign an NDA. I signed it. They said, okay, we have the new Wireless Go 2. We're sending you a kit. Should have it there by release day. Love to have you, tell people about it. And that's all. And they left it at that. And they gave me a tracking number. I went to look at the tracking number, and it just said, label's been created. We'll let you know when we know more, when the package has been delivered. Well, it never got delivered, and then it disappeared. And so the the release day came and went, and then finally I contacted them back, and I said, hey, were we supposed to get something here? So there was some sort of mix-up, evidently. I don't know where it happened, but they said they're going to send me one now, but I think they're out of stock, so it's maybe a while. So I'm hoping to do it, but I do have some initial thoughts that I'm happy to share on that, and that is there seems to be some confusion. Some people seem to be under the impression that this is a 32-bit float recorder in the transmitters, and I just want to kind of clarify that. I don't believe that's the case. You can export a 32-bit file from the recorder, but I don't believe it has multiple analog to digital converters. So it's not the unclippable type of, and I use that in air quotes, unclippable kind of preamp that you see in some of these other recorders that we've seen over the last few years. So yeah, you can very much clip, and you still have to set your gain appropriately. So it's not that, just so that everyone is clear on that. I think that's an important one. I'll be interested to see how well it holds up, especially at distance, when you have two transmitters transmitting back to a single tiny little receiver about this size that is two separate channels on 2.4 gigahertz. To me, that seems like a challenging thing to do, but others have done it too. Hollyland has their Lark, which and the Saramonic has the Blink 500 Pro, and those work pretty decently. And so I'm sure Rode can hopefully work something out that works well there too. But I would expect probably about the same in terms of audio quality that we got on the original Wireless Go 2 or Wireless Go, which was decent. Not amazing, but decent, I would say. And I think very usable. So it really, to me, it seems like a pretty good idea as a step forward in the Rode wireless ecosystem. So what else can I say about it? Any other specific questions about it? If you do, go ahead and put something in the chat over here and just put Curtis Jet Audio in front of it, and we'll take a look at that. So, all right, let's back. I think Philip had a couple other questions here. I've been trying to come up with a solution for symmetrizing, if that's even a word. I don't even know if it is a word. The unbalanced TRS outputs on my Sound Devices MixPre 6.2. I think a Y splitter and 2 of the Rode VXLR Pros should do the trick. Do you agree? Let's come over to the screen here, computer screen, and let's get off of here and go here. Okay. So I think when you say symmetrizing, you're talking about converting from unbalanced to balanced, I think, so that you can run XLR cables and a balanced connection. And there are a few different ways to do that. So you made reference to the Rode VXLR Pro, which is a transformer balanced 3.5 millimeter to XLR adapter. And this one does a couple of things. So it actually makes a balanced signal from a 3.5 millimeter input on one side to an XLR output on the other side. It also converts phantom power from the XLR side to 4 volts plug-in power on the 3.5 millimeter side. I'm curious why they chose 4 volts, but because that's not going to work with all lav or not going to be optimal for all lavalier microphones, but that is what they chose. Yeah, I think that will that do the job? You can use a Y splitter. I don't know. I mean, you'd have to try that. Here's one I know works for sure, and this is what I've used. If I'm trying to get the signal out of my MixPre 6 or 3 into 2 balanced XLR connections, I have been using this. It's the Whirlwind PCDI. And so it's 3.5 millimeter input on one side. It actually also has 1/4 inch inputs as well, so it's a little bit more versatile for other situations. It does have a ground lift, which the others don't have. And then you get 2 XLR outputs left and right over here. So it's a bigger box. So it's a little bit heavier. It's also $150 as opposed to $40 per on the Rode VXLR, but I know this one works for that situation. This one is really, I think, more for using a lavalier microphone that needs plug-in power and running that into a mixer. So it's kind of a design for a different purpose. It might work. I'm not positive, but I know this one works for sure. Okay, next question here. If anyone else has more insights, if they have worked with the Rode VXLR Pro, let us know what your experience has been like with that. Love to hear it. Philip's next question, does it make sense to even consider using anything else than an SSD hard drive if I'm looking to move DaVinci Resolve databases from my MacBook Pro to an external hard drive? Or could I actually even use one of the external rotating hard drives I already own for this purpose? My guess would be that they're too slow. Good news, you can actually, there is an app from Blackmagic Design which will, actually let's pull that up. Blackmagic disk speed test. So this app is available. I believe they have a version for both Windows and Mac. But essentially what you do is you can run it on a specific drive. So you choose which drive you want to, let's see, select target drive. Yeah, we'll give it access. Let's go ahead and choose, that's fine. No, you don't get my reminders. Are you crazy? Okay, so let's choose this drive and let's just, that's fine. You can see I haven't used it here, but it'll measure the write and the read speeds of each of those. And you can see it will tell you, which formats of video you can use and realistically expect them to work well. So we can go ahead and stop that test here. This drive would be fast enough for everything but writing 2160p 60 video in 10-bit YUV422. So that'll just give you a sense for how realistic it is on your external drives, whatever kind of drives you end up using. So that's how you can answer the question pretty definitively. All right. Do we have more questions? I think we have at least one more. Let's take a look here. David Z. My question is about noise on recordings. I'm doing some experiments with inexpensive equipment such as the Takstar SGC 598 shotgun microphone with a Zoom H1N recorder. The levels of hiss on the recordings is higher than I'd like. Is this self-noise from the mic, from the recorder, or ambient noise, or EMF interference? I don't think it's from the playback because I can look at the waveforms in Audacity and see it there also. What level of noise would you consider as expected from this setup? Any tips for minimizing or eliminating it? Yes. So yeah, it probably is. I mean, we're talking about what, I don't know what the current price of the Takstar SGC 598 is. I reviewed that years and years ago. It was something like a $35 camera top shotgun microphone with a 3.5 millimeter output. And then the H1N recorder is again, an $89 recorder. So yeah, I'd need to hear the exact recording. I'm assuming it is hiss, most likely. It's probably not EMF interference. Let me just actually see if I have a sample here, I believe, that I can play you of EMF interference. Let's just take a look at that. Rendered segments. Okay. Let me just run ahead. And I'm going to need to, give me 1 second here. We're just getting things configured. Okay, let's go ahead and play this for you here. Whoops. QuickTime Player. Okay, so here's an example of EMF, or EMI, right? Okay, so there's a sample of what that sounds like, just so you can hear. It's more of a buzzing sound, and it usually happens especially near AC adapters. Those tend to be some of the noisiest in terms of creating EMF or EM fields, which create interference. So that was an audio cable that I was holding up next to those AC adapters there, those power adapters, power supplies. So those are more likely to create problems like that, and it will have more of a buzzing sound than a hissing sound in most cases. So there can be ground issues sometimes, but we need to, again, David, if you want to email me or send to me some sort of file recording or put one up online, even better, I'll be happy to take a listen to that. But You may have to denoise. I mean, it's just maybe the nature of that gear. It's not super high-end gear, so you are going to there's probably plenty of self-noise is my guess in that case. Also, a lot of people overlook, a lot of rooms have more room tone than we realize, and that hissing can be other things too. It can be things like, air conditioning or fans in computers or even fans in cameras. There are just a lot of things that make noise in our lives and in the surroundings. And so a lot of times that's a contributing factor as well. But if it doesn't sound at all like the environment there, then it probably is self-noise. And in that case, denoising is probably your best bet. And even if you're trying to do that on a budget, even Audacity's denoising algorithm is pretty good for getting that kind of stuff out. So I do have a video on how to do that if you want to walk through. If you just do a search for Curtis Judd, Audacity, there's, I think, 3 different videos, one of which is about denoising. So you'll be able to find that over on YouTube. Okay. Do we have any other questions? I think that's everything we had that was submitted ahead of time. Let's go to the chat here and see what people want to talk about. Hey, thanks so much, Jason, for Emma, so she can skate. Funding Emma's new passion for roller skating. Emma's taking a look through the chat here, see what else we've got going. What else can I tell you about today? I don't know. I got that short film to finish still. It's after me. It's in the back of my mind. I've been thinking about it. I'm excited to try it. Oh, Emma's going to come over to a mic. Give me just a second here. We're going to get her unmuted. You're live.
Excellent. Thank you. This requires some clarification. Ted, do you mean subtitles as in like transcription or subtitles as in like the comments? The comments is a key by Aaron Parecki.
Yeah, so it's a little plugin for Chrome that is called Chat Overlay. So it's a Chrome plugin. What you do is you go to the video, the live chat video, or the live stream. There's a little shish kebab menu up there. You can pop out the chat, and this creates a, can we just show the whole thing? Go ahead and switch to the chat computer, actually, so you can see what this looks like, Ted. So go ahead and take the key off so that he can see the whole thing. So this is what the app looks like on the laptop that Emma is sitting in front of. So you can see the entire chat up above, and then down below, whenever she selects a particular entry in the chat, that gets put down below, and then we're taking that as a feed into our switcher and keying out the top part and just displaying the bottom part as an overlay on top of everything else. So that's how we're generally approaching this. It's a wildly popular, we get a question about that almost every stream, and I love that thing. That is just super helpful because it makes the live stream so much more interactive and a lot more fun and a lot more interesting for everybody. So it's not just me up here blathering on and on and on. It's kind of a conversation in some ways too. So hopefully that makes sense, Ted. And if you want details on that, Aaron Parecki is on YouTube, Parecki, I think is his last name. And he's covered that a variety of times. So if you want to go see how that works in more detail, he's got you covered. Okay. Kevin, do you have or will you be creating a course at your online school specifically geared towards dialogue editing? Well, it'll be more mixing in general. So that'll include dialogue editing, but it will cover mixing as a larger topic. So yeah, dialogue will be a big part of that. In fact, that's mostly what I do, to be honest, I probably, if I'm working on a corporate video, probably 90% of that is dialogue editing, 10% mixing. But we'll cover mixing in general with a big emphasis on dialogue editing. So good question. Thanks for that, Kevin. All right, UK Media. How do you rate SE Electronic microphones? I've just purchased the SX1S Plus Studio Kit. I hope it's a sound choice. Well, they're not a horrible company because Rupert Neve worked with them on a series of microphones just within the last decade, I believe. So, I don't think they're bad. I think their market is they're trying to produce quality microphones at an affordable price. And so, no, I think that's a fine choice. I hope it's working well for you. We'd love to hear a sample. And in fact, I wanted to announce, let's go ahead and announce this. If you guys have questions on future, I would encourage you to do one of two things. You can, of course, just send text. You can do it in the chat, of course. We love to do that. You can send me an email with a typewritten question ahead of time. But if you'd like, also either do a pre-recorded audio question or even better, a video question. And we'll play that back and actually talk about it. It's better to have it in your own words if we can. So feel free to do that. I'll go ahead and put a reminder in the announce email for next week that you can do that, and we'll play it back. So, yeah, that'd be cool. You're not muted. Do you want to be muted?
No.
You don't want to be muted?
Well, this one also requires some explanation. This was regarding the question about drive speed.
Oh, okay. So yes, fair enough. I'm going to go ahead. You're muted now, just so you're aware. We're still refining our process here, but yes, good point, Boulder Surfer. Yeah, the Resolve database just stores editing actions. So that's good to know. In other words, Resolve database's project files don't include media proxies, render files, etc. So they may not need the fastest disk speeds. Great point. Great point. So I don't know if in that question, Philip was talking about moving everything to an external drive. I kind of got that impression. We would include the media speed test, but if you're moving just the database, that's a good point. And you're going to keep all the other stuff on the MacBook Pro or on a faster, maybe a Thunderbolt SSD drive, then yeah, you're probably fine with a slower disk for the database. So you may have to just experiment with that to see. So good clarification. Thanks for that, Boulder Surfer. Is it time?
It is.
All right, let's do the giveaways. Wait, Emma wants to say something.
Jason asks, will I have a skating channel? Not yet. Thank you for the interest, though. It's very nice.
You need to skate first.
Yeah, I haven't, for context, I haven't been outside yet because there's white stuff on the ground still, snow. However, just this morning, I did go on a drive and I found a nice tennis court at which to skate later when it's warmer. So, while we're here, giveaway terms and conditions. We got to do this part. This is, if you've been here before, this is going to work as we've always done it. Choose a number, one number between 1 and 50. We will generate a random number and whoever's closest will win. If you've already won something, we're not going to stop you from entering again, but we did have that conversation about, if you have a lot of gear, maybe you should stop. Yeah. And then if you're a winner, we'd like you to send over an email, including your mailing address, to curtis@learnlightandsound.com. We will ship international, but you got to be patient. If you have a care of address in the US, then you'll get it faster. I think that's all. Allow 1 to 2 days for handling and shipping.
Yeah, it's been longer in the past, but this week it's going to be faster.
Well, now I will do it within 1 to 2 days.
Emma had some school responsibilities she had to take care of, so
yeah,
it was a little bit slower this last time.
1 to 2 days is what I try to do. So
cool. Okay, shall we do it?
Yes, I will put in a little starting here. Then you can start dropping your numbers. Thank you for not putting number splat in the chat. That's all.
All right, you're muted. Okay. So first up, let's do the Deity vMic D4 Duo. Emma will go ahead and put a little thing in the chat when you can start. Again, choose a number between 1 and 50. I've generated our random number using random.org. So that's available. And I think the chat is open now. Okay. All right, the numbers are pouring in. Good luck, people. This one's a fun one. If you need to do walk-up interviews, good way to do it.
Kevin, stop putting 666 in the chat.
What? What is with that man?
He guessed the devil's number on the Lord's Day. Oops. Peter Locke, this is the Shure KSM-8. He says the audio is very clear.
Yeah, very clear. Good.
Daniel, we wish we were in Valencia, California with you.
Yeah, we do. All right, looks like they've slowed up a little bit. Are we ready to close that one out?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, take a look at what do we have for our random number. Looks like number
43.
43 is it. Emma's going to take a look through the chat and find who was on 43 or closest to 43.
We have a 43.
We do.
Let me keep looking.
Okay, I'm going to see if we have multiple 43s.
Uh-oh.
Do we?
Wait.
Okay.
Ian Craig.
Ian Craig, you're the guy. You are the winner of the Deity D4 Duo microphone. I'm hoping we can see a review from you on this. If you'll just email me at curtis@learnlightandsound.com with your mailing address, and then we'll get you a shipping quote, and should be able to get that out in the next couple days here. So congratulations to Ian. All right. Let me tell you a little bit about the next one while Emma's kind of wrapping up there. This is the Hollyland Mars 300. I've reviewed this probably, gosh, it's been a couple of years now. This is an HDMI wireless transmitter, and it is a pretty good one. We've had a really good experience with this. We used it on a couple of productions, 3 productions actually, for narrative films, and then I've used it on a variety of things for corporate work as well. But we put this often on the camera, and then the director has a kind of roaming director's monitor that they can carry around. That's how we typically use it. We also used it in one case for the focus puller. The focus puller was able to then take this, they had a monitor off in another part of the set, kind of video village area. It wasn't officially a video village, but they were able to then do the focus pulling with this. It was a drama, so there wasn't super high action, so it was feasible. There is some latency with this. It's not, perfect, no latency, but it's a pretty good system, and we've had pretty good luck with it. So it runs on Sony L-series batteries, the NPF style batteries, and it's the full kit, a transmitter and a receiver. So what do you say, Emma?
Let's get a new number going.
Okay, I'm going to generate a number here from random.org. I got it.
Ready, go.
Okay, here we go. Good luck, everybody.
Nobody put 666. That's not cool.
And we have Kevin's endorsement here that the Mars 300 is a great wireless HDMI solution. Thank you for that, Kevin. I know you worked on that one as well, or worked with it as well. Got some numbers coming in. Good. Keeping an eye on things. Okay.
Yo, Zach, if you want to actually enter between 1 and 50, bro, you put a 65. Just throwing that out there.
So yeah, Zach, you're welcome to put in another number. Kevin is not welcome to put in another number.
He put 51, so he automatically disqualified himself.
He's one of my...
He's somebody who
favorite.
comes on stream to bother us.
No, he's nothing but fun. He's the same way in person. We have had a great time. Kevin and I have met up several times now, or at least twice, right, Kevin? We met up at NAB 2019 and 2018, I think. 2018, I think, was the first year you came, Kevin, and went to dinner and got to hang out and talk about things. It was a good time. So, all right, are we ready to
Yes.
close that one out? Okay. All right. Our random number was 5. Ooh. I saw that there...
4s and 6s.
I saw a lot of 4s and 6s. So this one could be exciting. Ooh, this is going to be... There's some suspense here.
Yeah.
Who knew that you would get this on a sound for video session?
Man, a lot of y'all picked 4 and 6.
Okay, so do we need to do a rerun there? Another...
I say the first people who picked 4 and 6 respectively. No?
No, everyone that guessed 4 or 6.
Okay,
can
that's going to be a
run
lot of
off.
people to tag.
That's okay, but we're choosing a
That
new
is okay.
random number. So, okay, once you take me off the screen, I will get a new random number generated here. So if you chose 4 or 6, you are welcome to be part of this runoff round here. We call it that. I never expected to be a game show host, and this is kind of goofy. Okay, we have our new random number.
People who guessed 4 or 6 only.
Yeah, so if you guessed 4 or 6, go ahead and guess again here. And let's see what we get this time. Okay, we got some. We got one from, let's see. Got from Stephen, Forrest, Mike Stranks. Oh, Mike is going to pass. Okay, fair enough. Chad's got a guess in there. Shoji Productions has a guess in there. All right. Ike's got one in there. And Teacher of Teachers has got one in there. Whew. Okay, Alan, I think Alan, you were not in the runoff, were you? Okay, everything, if you had a 4 or a 6 before, you have to do it under the point where it says Curtis Judd Audio, 4 or 6 people bid here. Brian, did you have a 4 or a 6 before?
I think he did.
Yeah, so go ahead and put your guess here, Brian. Go ahead and enter it again here in the chat.
That little bracketed emoji makes me laugh. I'm not going to laugh into the mic, though.
Okay, did we get everybody that entered a 4 or a 6 on the first round? Do you have a new guess entered now? I'm going to go ahead and close this here in just a minute or a few seconds.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I think we got them all.
Okay, we got them all. We're going to go ahead and close that one.
Very good.
All right, so our random number was 12 this time. Emma's scouring the chat here to see what we got.
9 is closer than 18, right?
Yep.
I can't numbers today. Okay, there you go.
All right, Magnus, you are the winner of the Hollyland Mars 300. So if you will please email me at curtis@learnlightandsound.com and send your mailing address, we will get a quote together for you for the shipping and we'll get that over to you. So congratulations on that. All right. Do we have any other questions in the chat that we want to talk about? No, we still have like 2 minutes. If you have a question, you have 2 minutes. We're working on our camera situation here, so just an update there. I don't know if you've all noticed, but since we moved to the bigger switcher, we have this kind of weird thing where it's kind of muddy looking. This is not how my camera typically looks. And we haven't figured out exactly where it is in the signal chain. But I think, I don't know. We're still working on it. We're probably going to change it up next week. Next week, we might use a Blackmagic camera for our main camera just to see how that goes. So we might be doing an HD stream as opposed to a 4K stream. So you might want to see that. I don't know. It's up to you. All right. I think we're probably good for today. Let's go ahead and close it out. Thanks everybody for joining us. Get out there and make some great sound, and we will talk to you again next week. Take care.